everyone. So, yeah, we're reaching the final stage of our conference. I hope everyone like it. It's my first time here at the ElixirConf, so thank you and a round of applause for the organizers. All right, so I'm going to speak about rebuilding workflow orchestration in Elixir. But it's just the story of Gust. A little bit about myself. I have been doing software for the past 17 years. I've been through it all, like from iOS, Rails, Kubernetes, and of course, Elixir. Currently, I'm a founder and the CTO of a company called Comparacar. And of course, I built Gust after growing frustrated with workflow orchestration. And just a fun fact, you see here a hand. So I was also a hand model on TechCrunch because I was working on an app and they liked my hand. I was also the developer, but they liked my hand, so they decided to feature my hand on TechCrunch. All right. Thank you, thank you. All right, so I also want to show you something very unusual. I know this is not a gossip conference, but I don't know how many of you remember last year in July, there was a scandal of a CEO of a tech company at the Coldplay concert. So the guy was basically cheating his wife with the HR. And I know it sounds strange, but this is related with Gust, so stay with me. All right, let's rewind before this event. Our story actually starts earlier, okay? I want to talk about first the Comparacar problem, okay? So what is the Comparacar problem? Imagine you want to go and buy a vehicle, and okay, you go online and you go on a marketplace. You're looking for a Honda, so you type Honda, and the model you want is Civic, so then you look at the offers and you'll be like, okay, this seems fine. And you go to another marketplace and you also do the same. And after the third marketplace, you're mostly like, okay, like it's fine. I don't want to go like check all the marketplaces. So you pick the first one or the second one, and what actually happens is that you have like lots and lots of options. However, you didn't have the time and you didn't know, so you went from the one that actually was better for the marketplace, not the one that was best for your pocket. It's like the same thing that you do with airline tickets, right? You don't go on the website of the company, you go on Google Flights, Kayak, Skyscanner. So we did the same thing, but for vehicles. And so what was the solution? We fetch data through all these marketplaces, we organized, and we did this, but we also had to organize, not only just fetch the data, because we want to know what is Honda and what is not Honda. So we had like a selection of brands, and we spawn workers to go navigate marketplace and then enumerate models because Honda has many models. And also each model has many versions. So we have 2020, Turbo, whatever, and within this, you also have multiple pages that you had to crawl. So we started with a brand worker spawning a model worker. Then for each model, also the same for version, and then the same for marketplace. And I also want to be very clear what I mean about workers. It's just like anything that is performing on a background, and you can think of just like an O-bound worker, or if you've been through Rails, you know, Sidekick. So we were just like, okay, we're just going to create a lot of workers and see what happens. And the branching combination led to 2 million work items, because one, we started with brands, and we're creating another worker for marketplaces, for models, and etc. So this grows very quick. And imagine, we were not doing API calls. We were scraping websites, and so we didn't have any official API. So, you know, they changed the website. And they have stuff that you didn't anticipate because you cannot predict what you don't know. And imagine we had to do the retries and failures, and it was chaos. So I found myself babysitting 1 million workers, literally. Failures were very hard to inspect, like logs everywhere. And stop bad runs was like, I said, here it's painful, but it was like impossible, because one thing was leading to another one, was like cascading, and we just had to restart everything. It was crazy. And we didn't have like a clear view of what was going on, so I had to go through each kind of like worker, inspect, and I understood that spawning workers is just not enough for this case. So that's why we built Gust, okay? We needed an orchestration layer on top of it, because we needed to have like a clear flow definition. And of course, track every state, pause and stop, and isolate execution. And why isolate? When I say isolate, I mean like physically isolated. Because you can have, of course, you can have like a different process running, doing the background things, but they're all in the same machine. And this thing, like what happened with us, is like it started to grow, so we're just keeping adding more capabilities to our infrastructure, and it started to fail, and this was like affecting everything, not only just the background. And of course, we built in Elixir, was like made for that. So before I dive into the code, I want to be like very explicit. What does orchestration actually mean? Because it can mean a lot of things. But here, first, we have a flow definition. So this is where you declare the tasks and you set the order of the things. You can also set the schedule. So this should happen every minute, once a day, in a month. And now you have to track the state. So we need state management. We need to make sure we know what is really going on, like what is retrying, what failed, and what completed. And you need to observe, because it's hard, especially when you have like a lot of things happening at the same time. It helps to have like a very, very clear place to observe and, of course, inspect logins and know the timing, how long this is taking, is it stuck, and overall have the workflow health. All right, now let's go into flow definition. How many of you heard about DAG? Please raise your hands. Awesome, great, because this is, for me, it was like, when I started to understand and I got this term DAG, for me it was like, DAG, okay, direct acyclic graph, it's like a very fancy name, but overall it's just like a graph that never loops. That's it. I like to imagine as a tree, but it's not a tree. We can have multiple roots, but it's just like a workflow. So, but you're going to use the name DAG here, which is more appropriate. And within the DAG, we're going to define our tasks. By the way, our DAG file is just an Elixir module that uses Gust DSL. Here, we are setting a schedule for every minute. First thing we're going to do here is load brand, set the downstream for fetch A and fetch B, and they're going to be run in parallel. And then, after both are done, we're going to run insert. So Gust will take this code and create a DAG. Now, this is the part where we grab the code and we are transforming into data. And how we do this? Like, kind of simple. We just parse our file. We're going to have a DAG definition. We also going to create a DAG in our database to have a run for this DAG. So we are also creating a run for this DAG and trigger. I also want to note that we are going to store logs. And now comes the UI part, the observability. And we're going to do this through a real-time user interface. And we wanted to be able to trigger, of course, and able to inspect logs, inspect tasks. And this is also something that I really like, the task graph, which is have like a very clear view of what is going to happen, the order of stuff, and your DAG code. And I'm going to show you why we displayed the DAG code. So let's take our example and show it. I'm going to show like a quick video because I want to do something different here. So we are creating here a DAG in our DAG folder. So we have a DAG folder that Gust going to monitor and check. Okay, let me see if I can find DAGs. So first of all, let me just make sure I have Gust DSL, and we're going to do some logging, and we're going to define our task. And of course, we need to define the downstream. So the downstream, basically, what's going to happen next. And here, I have also Gust, the UI here, and you see it already showed us here the task. You can trigger, however, it's not doing anything. Let me zoom out a little bit. So we are going to perform some logging. Of course, it's just a toy example. And you can trigger. Here, we're also adding more stuff. Again, we are setting a task name. You see here the task name here, load brand, and fetch A. This is something interesting. I'm also adding here the log as a warning because I want to have a different UI for warning. And here you see there's also a warning here. All right, cool. So this is the happy path. All right, so I created a DAG, ran, awesome, beautiful. But that's not usually how it happens. So I'm going to do the opposite here. I'm going to try to break my live code and see how Gust will handle. So let me come here, and this is our DAG, okay? Okay, so let me open here the UI because I already have it running. And so this is our DAG, our Honda offers DAG, and usually what you're doing is basically, okay, you are developing the DAG, and Gust is looking at the folder. So imagine if I do something very stupid, like add some random things, it will not compile. So, okay, now Gust knows I'm not going to compile this because there's an issue here. So let's do something more realistic and introduce an error here. So we're erasing here, kaboom, and we want to run and trigger, and oops, this thing failed. And the cool thing is I have the error message right in my face. Because, all right, so this is not working. And it's retrying. So imagine, I did this, and this is like a very, I did like a huge workflow, and then the last step failed. I was like, oh, damn it, do I have to run everything again? No. You can just fix your code. You can cancel this guy because he will try to retry, and it can just do fetch B again. So it is now working. All right. So let's go back a little bit here in our presentation because I showed you guys. And yeah, this was the backup plan. Nope. Don't run here. All right, so I showed you Gust, but I'm going to be very transparent. This is not how we actually started, okay? Before Gust was created, we had Airflow. Now, how many of you heard about Airflow? This is a very important thing. Okay, good. I was talking with Lars previously, because I had this feeling that a lot of people didn't understand what was Airflow, because after I created Gust, I went to the community, hey guys, I did something like Airflow, and it was like, what Airflow? What the hell is Airflow? Okay, good, so we're on the same page. So most of you probably know, but Airflow was created in 2014 by Airbnb. So Airflow, Airbnb, see? It has a rich ecosystem, lots of plugins, plenty of documentation, and it's Python-based. And yeah, at the beginning, it helped us. We'd had like a lot it was very hard for us, painful to have lots of workers, no orchestration. So we wanted to come up to a solution. Remember, I am a founder and a CTO, so I need to come up with things fast. And sometimes they're not the coolest things, but they must solve your problem as soon as possible. And we started to work with Airflow. However, Airflow is heavy and slow, all right? Just to get started, you need 4 gigabytes of RAM. And then I'm going to run lots of process. And I'm going to need 2 databases. Like for me, this is like, I don't like database, but okay, you need 2 databases. And documentation is broad, really. I wanted to do something like specific, and I had this feeling that they just added documentation just to like add something to their website, but I couldn't really find like a real case of what I wanted to do. And the UI is slow and unresponsive. And I have also like a very interesting story about the UI. I was on my weekend, and then I had an issue with a run that failed, and I need to do a manual retry. And I didn't have my computer, I just had my phone. So I went, took my phone, went to Airflow, and the UI was like, upside down. I couldn't find the button. I was like, and I was nervous because this was like an important task. And I was like so stressed, so I found a computer and fixed. And the most interesting part is also, you have all these memes here. I didn't create the memes. I found it on the internet. So, it's not only me that find Airflow annoying. And this one here is my favorite one. One does not simply use Airflow. And yeah, there's always a catch. So all this became very expensive. And it's also very hard to self-host because you have lots of things, as I mentioned. You have databases, processes. And also, I wanted to just do basic scripting, for instance, to fetch a website and parse. And I had a junior developer at the time, and I said, hey, just fix this. It's like a very simple script code where you're just like fetching information, this website. Okay, just go and fix it. It's very simple. However, it was on Airflow. So I had to explain him what was Docker, and that was Docker Compose. And then I said, hey, run this on your machine. And the guy couldn't make it because it was very, very hard. So this is also expensive for us. And so we hired a managed solution to host Airflow for us. Because I was like, yeah, I can't. All right, so just trying to find the best hosting solution for Airflow. And we spent a lot of money. However, kept running into inefficiencies and bugs. So you can see here my tickets. And here, it's also something that annoyed me a lot. It's just like Airflow was storing things that I didn't really need. So my database, this is like the meta database, was reaching 80 gigabytes of just logs and things that the task returned. So it doesn't make sense. It's like the database was there to support my runs, not to just store whatever, and just blew. So, and it also, the UI, the web server was keep failing. I couldn't reach. And now we're back to the one of the beginning of our presentation is this event happened. I was at the peak of my frustration with Airflow, and then I got this from my girlfriend. She texted me like, hey, did you see what happened with this guy? He's the CEO of a tech company. And I was like, huh? How do you know about this? Like, how do you know? Because I know this company. I am a customer. And I also found a very, very funny meme that, a random Coldplay concert occurs, and everyone now knows about orchestration. So that's a true story. So for me, this was like, okay, that's enough. it's like it was a sign from heaven, like, guys, like, stop, try to find something better. So, of course, now we have the right tool for the job. Like, I knew about Elixir. I used Elixir before, but more as like a fun toy thing. And I was like, wait, why do I have to worry about multiple processes and databases? And I have this already built in. So I have lightweight processes, fault isolation, supervision trees, message passing, real-time UI, which is like, wow, so good. It's like, why am I doing stuff in Python? So what is Gust implementation, actually? It's just Elixir macros for DAG definition. Of course, we're going to use Acto. And we're going to have UI, live view, Phoenix. So thank you, Phoenix. And how are we going to do the run? So let's use dynamic supervisors. So we can add a child and add another child, and it will monitor them, supervise them, and let's spec that in an umbrella app. So, wow, it's like already done. But now let's dive in a little bit on the architecture. We have basically two apps, web app and what I call core. Core does all the things that are core. File monitor, cron job, supervises the runs, and you have also the space here that I left for dynamic children. So basically, looks at the DAG folder, parses, runs, and you store stuff on Postgres, and that's it. So, far less external dependencies. And this was like very, very, very nice for us because if you look at the benchmark, it's crazy, crazy, crazy more efficient. First, we have 4 times less RAM. So this is on idle. And this is something very important because this kind of systems, they are event-driven. So there's going to be some part of the time they're not going to do anything. They're just stopped. So, and I want this to be efficient as possible, but not only on idle, but also in parallel running. You have 1.6 times less RAM consumption. Also for 100. You can also see this reflecting on CPU. We're going to use less CPU. And it's like overall, it's just so much cheaper to host it, which translated to like 10 times reduction in our costs. So it's very interesting to see when you apply stuff that were like made for this use case, you don't have to actually do anything else. You already have efficiency gains just by using the right architecture for your problem. And Gust expanded the core orchestration. So now we also have multi-node support and headless execution. When I say headless, I mean if you don't want the UI, the web part, you can just run, parse, run, whatever, and it's fine. You don't need to have the UI if you don't want. And secrets management, which is something very interesting because when you're creating DAGs, you want, let's say, call OpenAI. And you're going to use tokens, but it's on your DAG file. You don't want to expose DAG files, so you can just have Gust stores the secret, and you can use in any DAG you want. And also Python support via GustPy. And just to be clear, we're not going to use Python X here. I tried to use Python X, but the idea was to bring some of our legacy Python code to be run on Gust. And of course, we need to do stuff in parallel, and it should be able to scale. And Python X was not designed for that, unfortunately. And now, of course, AI capabilities, right? We want to be able to just prompt, not write code. And this is something also that it got my attention. Like at the beginning, I felt like it was just like, okay, cool, like AI can help us. But it's very interesting. If you give AI the power to understand the workflow, get the status, get the logs, it can do like very, very amazing things. So I also want to show you guys like things that other uses of Gust. For instance, here you have a daily stock decider. Let's see if Claude will be able to help me here. So hi, please, let me see if I have here the prompt here. Let me show you also here the DAG. So this was, Claude created this, because I was like, hey, let me know when should I buy NVIDIA stocks. So instead of having like a open claw, whatever, doing, consuming tokens, just like create the workflow, run, validate, and I don't care. Like, so, trigger, of course. Oh, here, already triggered. And check the logs, please, just to show some capabilities. Oh, yeah, it does that. It tried to read another log that is not the Gust log. All right, so we're done. Basically, so Claude going to tell me, all right, so if you should buy or not, and they all, I don't know why, but it's always like you should hold, don't sell your NVIDIA stock. So there's also useful information for you guys. Anyway, this was like very impressive for me because he was able to create the DAG and perform the run, and I can also take a look, I can also inspect, and this was very cool. All right, so I also want to express where Gust sits in the Elixir system, right? I know we have like lots of other background job libs that do cool stuff, and they're very powerful. So you have Oban, of course, handoff, reactor, and Gust is placed right in the middle between a DAG runner with persistence and UI. Also something cool that we already have like new contributors from outside, and think Gust as a full-fledged system, not just a background job. So I want to stress a little bit more on this. Gust is a good use case for multiple step workflows, okay? And if you need scheduling, and also if you have something that it needs to be changed very, very rapidly. So imagine you're doing something, and there's also a very interesting story. We were doing customer processing. We wanted to make sure in ComparaCard that our customer had credits to buy a vehicle. So we're doing like for each customer, we are starting a run, doing processing, and like it's a long processing because you have to check a lot of databases, wait for stuff to happen. And one of the APIs, like the most critical one, it's a third-party API, and it just stopped working. And they say, hey guys, sorry, we're having issues here, and this is not working. And we had two solutions. The first one was just like remove in our website our lead form and don't capture any customer. Or what we did is we just pause the execution. So for instance, we came here and we pause. So all the runs, they were like still happening, like the lead form was creating new runs, but they were paused. And then after the guy said, okay, cool, we're back, so I could just enable again, and we'll like already backfill and do everything. So This was like very, very good and very useful for us. And of course, this is not a great fit for if you just want to send email on the background, or if you just want to call one API or something that is also very tied with your business logic. This is not a very good use case. And I want to wrap it up to like express you guys how we went from millions of workers to a lightweight orchestrator. So remember, we started with workers, creating more workers, spawning more workers, and we went to chaos. Then we got, okay, Airflow can help us. So we implemented Airflow, which was fine, cool, but then Airflow became heavy and expensive. So then that event happened. I was like, man, let's use Elixir. So we created Gust. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And okay, if you got the reference, so you can find me on X. And I think we have a few minutes for a question. So if you're happy.
Very, very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering if it's possible to load in the UI, like dynamically some workflows.
Okay.
So not taking them from the code base, but like hot loading the module.
Okay, so you want to know if we can, basically if you can do dynamic DAGs within the DAG. This is like a very good question, and this is something I've been working on. Gust does not support this yet, but this is something very powerful that Airflow does not allow you to have dynamic DAGs. And I think Elixir would be a very good candidate to have this feature. So.
How would you compare it to Oban Pro workflows?
Good question, great question. First, I'm gonna repeat the question. So how they compare with, Gust compared with Airflow Pro. So first of all, Gust is free, and Oban Pro has a different approach to the same problem. So it's much more of like how you're applying this, and they're very similar, but this is more when you need something that is changing constantly. You need to you have runs that are doing processing, and you have to stop, change the code, and let the other one still running, because on each run it just takes a snapshot of the DAG, and it's get the time and get the snapshot, performs the run, imagine, and then you want to change something, but you don't want to. You want to keep the same version for this run. So it's very specific use case, and they I mean, you can use both, whatever, but it's.
How did you get into open source? Was it like the upfront decision, or did you do it internally first?
Okay, so why open source? To be honest, because I built stuff using open source tools. So for me, it's I'm wrapping all this and saying this is proprietary. It didn't make sense. So since I use a lot of cool open source things, why not just do the same? So.
Thanks for the talk. Is there any global concurrency limit that you can impose on the executions of your tasks? Because you just showed that you click on continue, and then you might have hundreds or thousands of runs queued. Is there a way to deal with that?
A way to, sorry?
A way to deal with that you don't want to execute all of them at the same time, maybe.
Good question. So currently, no. If you just enable again, it will backfill, because that's the idea. However, this is also something that I want to be able, I want to add more control to this, because sometimes you want to do things in a certain time and not allow two runs at the same time. This is also a feature that I want to work on it.
Hi, I'm using Open Pro, and I'm interested into trying this as maybe some alternative to some parts of it. Can Gust live inside my app? Like, I mean, in the same database and the same app, or does it need to be a separate application and database?
This is what I like about Elixir. I'm assuming your app is Elixir, right? Okay. So yeah, you can have both. Basically, so when you create a new Gust project, what you're actually doing is just create a Phoenix project and importing Gust Web, and Gust Web going to import Gust Core, and that's it. So that's actually how we do it. We have Gust Core, and we create a Comparacar Gust, and we have all our logic there, and so yeah.
We have time for a few more questions, if there are any. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.